They were for evacuation. It was the height of stupidity to go up against an opponent who could use Tier 4 magic. And if the messenger was really so horrible, what other conclusion could there be? But could she bluntly say all that? As she swirled in a whirlpool of thoughts, Zayusu smiled and said, as if he were talking to himself, "I'll go ahead and say what I really think." What was he going to say? Crush fixed her eyes on him. "What I am worried about is what happens after the evacuation." Crush didn't seem to grasp his meaning, so he spoke matter-of-factly. "Even if we were able to move from this place we were so used to, do you really think we'll manage to have the same lifestyle somewhere else? No, it would be difficult. Leaving this place and creating a new habitat would require a fight for survival. They would have to win in that ecosystem's struggle for existence. The Lizardmen were NT champions of the lake. Acquiring the marsh had taken years and years. There was no way their race could build a habitat in an unfamiliar place quickly. There's also a real possibility that we won't be able to gather enough food. She didn't understand what he was getting at, so she responded in a prickly, confused voice. "Yeah, so what would happen if all 5 tribes in this area tried to evacuate?" Then she didn't know what to say. She had finally figured out what Zayusu meant. Even though the lake was vast, an evacuation spot that one tribe chose would likely look good to the others. What would they do if a fishing rivalry broke out when they were already fighting a new struggle for existence? It could get ugly. It could end up like a war. But you can mean fighting when we ray not sure we can win isn't any no, it's not. I am counting on reducing the number of mouths across all tribes. That's your reason. That was why he wanted to form an army and fight, even if they lost, just to decrease the population of Lizardmen. The idea that those besides the warriors, hunters, and priests fighting for their survival could die was extreme, but she could understand it. Having them die might even be the correct choice in the long run. If there were fewer mouths to feed, they could get away with less food. Then they might have a chance at cohabitating. Crush desperately searched for a way to refute the argument. "Are you saying that even though we don't know how dangerous the new spot might be, we should go in with smaller numbers?" "Listen to me. Even if we take over the area without problems, then what? If the fish supply runs low, the 5 tribes will just have to kill one another, but we might be able to catch lots of fish. And if we can his cold retort left her lost for words. Zayusu was basing his actions on the next to worst case scenario. Crush was making mostly hopeful observations. If they operated based on her ideas and something bad happened, it would be a disaster. But it wouldn't be if they went with Zayusu's plan. And if the number of adult lizardmen decreased as a result of their defeat, at least they would have died honorable deaths. "If you refuse, we'll have to fight you first." His dark voice gave Crush chills. He announced he wasn't going to let Red Eye be the only tribe to maintain its population and move to a new location. That was a valid decision, and she understood it completely. It was the only way to avoid the danger of weakened tribes being destroyed by Red Eye and the numbers they had preserved. It was only natural that someone entrusted with their tribe's survival would think in that way. She would probably do the same thing if she were in his position. "I think the chances of killing one another in the new land will be lower if we form an alliance, even if we lose." Crush didn't understand him and let a genuine expression of puzzlement appear on her face. Zayusu explained in another way, "We'll have deeper friendship ties. Instead of different tribes, we'll feel like comrades who fought together." "I see." She rolled the words around in her mouth. "So if tribes spilled blood together, things would be less likely to devolve into a fatal fight, even if the food situation was bad." But she wondered, based on her experience, if that was really true. As Crush delved into her own thoughts, facing slightly downward in silence, Zayusu asked in a voice that troubled her, "By the way, how did your tribe make it through that time?" It was like she'd been stabbed with a needle. Her head jerked up despite herself. When she looked at him, she saw he was surprised. So he really doesn't know. They hadn't been together long, but Crush had already gotten the hang of Zayusu's personality. She instinctively understood that he wasn't asking as a threat. She narrowed her eyes and looked at him intently, like she was trying to bore a hole into his head. She knew the baffled Zayusu had no idea why he was getting such a stare, but she couldn't stop. "Do I have to answer?" Crush's voice was full of loathing. The change was so dramatic it nearly felt like he was talking to a different person, but Zayusu couldn't back down. Maybe her answer would save them all. I want to know, was it the power of your priests, or some other way? Maybe it can save us. Having said that much, he faltered. If there was a way to save them, Crush, wouldn't he look so pained? Perhaps she was able to read what Zayusu was thinking just then. She snorted and scoffed at the whole thing, herself included. That's right, there's no way to save anyone at all. She paused and smiled an exhausted smile. We were cannibals, we ate our own dead. Zayusu was shocked, speechless. Killing the weak, decreasing the number of mouths to feed was not taboo, but cannibalism was unclean. It was the most taboo of taboos. Why did she tell me that? Why would she tell a secret she should have carried to her grave, to a stranger from another tribe, a visitor? Does she not mean to let me go alive? No, that can't be right. I don't get that feeling from her. Crush wasn't sure why she said it either. She knew plenty of lizardmen from other tribes would scorn them. So why? Her mouth chattered away as if she no longer had control over it. Back then, when the other tribes started the war, we didn't have enough food either, and things were bad. The reason we didn't fight in the war was that our tribe has a lot of priests and not many warriors. Thanks to the priests, we could make lots of food with magic. She went on unceasingly, as if possessed. The amount of food they could make was still insignificant compared to the number of tribe members. All we could do was face death and slowly tread the path to our extinction. But one day, the chief brought food, bright red meat. Maybe I wanted someone to listen to hear the story of my crime. She ground her teeth together. The male before her was quietly listening. He didn't show disgust on his face. Crush was thankful for that. What kind of meat was it? Everyone pretty much knew. At the time, we had strict laws. Any family who broke them was kicked out of the village. Our chief brought meat just after some people had been banished. We shut our eyes and ate it to survive. But we couldn't go on like that. At one point, all the built-up discontent exploded into a revolt. She closed her eyes and remembered their chief. We ate it, we knew, and we ate it, so we were just as guilty. Honestly, when I think of it now, it's so strange. After a moment of silence, she looked squarely at Zayusu. She was surprised to find a sensation of happiness inside. She saw no disgust in his quiet eyes. Why did she feel that way? She had a vague idea of the answer. Please look at me. Every now and then in Red Eye, someone like me is born. They always excel at something. For me, it was priestly powers. For that reason, our authority is second only to the chief. Then I led the revolution and revolted against him. The village split in two and fought, but my side won because we had more people. And then because your population decreased, the food was enough to go around. Yes, in the end, we survived. When we revolted, the chief wouldn't surrender. He died having sustained countless wounds. And when I dealt the fatal blow, he smiled at me. Crush strung her words together painfully. They were like pus that had gradually gathered in her heart since the day she killed their chief. To Zayusu, she was finally able to spit out these things she'd never be able to say to the tribe, the ones who believed in her and fought against the chief. That was why she couldn't stop. Her words were like water flowing from high to low ground. It wasn't the kind of smile you flash at someone who was killing you. There was no hatred, or envy, or hostility, or cursing, or anything. It was a truly lovely smile. Maybe the chief was right all along. I keep thinking that, with the death of our chief, the one who was the root of all our evil, the tribe came together again. And not only that, we even reduced our own number enough to solve the food issue. That was all she could take. The dam broke with all the strength she had expended struggling to bear the burden of her crime as acting chief. She gulped back the muddy surge. Her thoughts were in tatters. She couldn't get them into words. She wept cuckoo. There weren't many tears due to her biological structure, but the emotions were the same. She broke down. Her body was so small. When living in nature, weakness was as good as a crime. Children were protected, but strength was a priority for adult male and female lizardmen. From that standpoint, she must have been humiliated. It couldn't be good for the leader of the tribe to show weakness to a member of another tribe, someone she wasn't even close to. But the sentiments in Zayusu's heart weren't anything like that. Maybe it was partly because she was a beautiful female, but more than that, she was a warrior. She was a wounded warrior who gasped, struggled, and still went forward. She'd shown only a glimpse of weakness. If she was standing up and trying to go forward, she was no weakling. Zayusu approached and gently put his arms around her. We aren't all-powerful or all-knowing. All we can do is decide how to act as we go. I might have done the same thing in your position. I am not trying to cheer you up. Are there any correct answers in this world? We just keep going forward, full of pain and regret, with scars on the bottoms of our feet. All you can do is go forward. That's what I think. They could feel each other's body heat. They could also hear the beating of their hearts faintly. The two pulses gradually matched rhythms. This created the illusion they were one. It was a strange feeling. Zayusu felt a warmth he had never experienced in all his life as a lizardman. It wasn't because he was holding another lizardman. Was it because he was holding this female crush Lulu? A little time went by. Then Crush lifted herself off Zayusu's chest. As her body heat withdrew, Zayusu felt it was unfortunate. Of course, he was too embarrassed to say so. IV made an unsightly impression. Do you hate me? What's unsightly? You struggle down your path. You get hurt along the way but continue on. Do I look like such a fool that I think that unsightly? You're beautiful. Her white tail writhed, striking the floor several times. Yikes. Incapable of asking what she meant by that lone word, Zayusu asked a different question. More importantly, does Red Eye farm fish? Farm? Yeah, raise fish for yourselves to eat. We don't do anything like that. Fish are a blessing from nature. As far as Zayusu knew, no lizardman tribes had fish farming technology. The very idea of increasing the amount of food they had with their own hands was foreign to them. That seems to be the way priests druids think, but could you change your mind so that you can grow fish to eat? The priests in my tribe accepted it. Crush bobbed her head yes. Then I'll teach you how to farm. It's important to give them the right food. You can use fruit that druids make with magic. They grow quite well when you give them those. You really don't mind sharing your technology with us? Of course not. Hiding it won't help anyone. It's more important to save the tribes. Crush bowed low with her tail pointed up and thanked him. I am grateful. You don't really have to thank me. In exchange, I need to ask you again. The emotion drained out of Crush's face. That deeply calmed Zayusu. It was a question he couldn't avoid. He held his breath, and at the same time Crush inhaled. Then he asked, what is Red Eye's plan for the imminent war? We decided yesterday to evacuate. Then ILL asked the acting chief, Crush Lulu, do you still think you'll do that? She couldn't answer. Her reply would decide the fate of her tribe. It was only natural to hesitate, but Zayusu could do nothing besides put on a troubled smile. It's your decision. The reason your chief smiled at you in the end must have been because he was entrusting the tribe's future to you. Now's the time to carry out that mission. I've said everything I can say. All that's left is for you to decide. Crush's eyes rolled, casting her gaze around the room. She wasn't trying to escape or looking for help. She was just trying to arrive at the correct answer within herself. No matter what her conclusion, Zayusu would accept it. As the acting chief, let me ask you, how many are you going to allow to evacuate? We were planning to have each tribe evacuate 10 warriors, 20 hunters, 3 priests, 70 males, 100 females, and a few children. And the others, depending on the circumstances, we may just have them die. Crush said nothing and merely looked up into empty space. Then she murmured, I see, so I want to know your decision, acting chief Crush Lulu. Crush considered all kinds of plans. Killing Zayusu was one option, of course. Personally, she didn't want to do that, but as acting chief, she felt differently. She could kill him, and then the whole village could escape. She rejected that idea. It was a very dangerous gamble. They didn't even have any proof that he had come alone. So how about promising him to fight, and then running away? This could also be problematic. They ran the risk of him changing plans. Opponents might cull the population by fighting with the Red Eye. His real goal was decreasing the number of mouths to feed. In that case, it didn't matter who they fought. In the end, if she said she wouldn't form an alliance, he'd probably take that answer home. He'd return with an army to destroy the Red Eye. However, maybe Zayusu hadn't noticed. There was one hole in his plan. Even so, if they didn't go with him, they wouldn't be able to avoid the food problem. Crush smiled knowingly. There had been no way out of this conversation from the beginning. It started from the point she'd heard what he had to say. It began when the Green Claw tribes started their plan to form an alliance. There was only one way for the Red Eye to survive: join the alliance and fight with them. Zayusu surely knew that too. So the reason he was waiting for her answer must have been because he wanted to make sure the commanding Lizardmen was worth allying with, and that they would commit. But if those words came out of her mouth, many lives would be lost. And let me say one thing, we were not fighting to die, we were fighting to win. I may have said some things that made you anxious, but if we beat the enemy, we'll be laughing about it later. So please don't misunderstand that point. Crush nodded to show she understood. He is a really nice male, she thought as she gave her decision. We of the Red Eye tribe will cooperate with you. This will ensure our chief's smile isn't meaningless, and it will help as many Red Eye members as possible survive. She bowed deeply and stretched her tail straight up. I thank you. He slowly bowed and lifted his tail. His actions said more than words could express. Early in the morning, Zayusu stood in front of Rororo and gazed at the gate of the Red Eye village. He yawned a huge cure in spite of himself. He had participated as an observer in the Red Eye's meeting until late the previous night, so he was a bit tired. But there wasn't much time left. He had to get to another tribe today. Fighting back sleep unsuccessfully, he yawned again, even bigger than before. He had the feeling he would be able to sleep on Rororo, even if his balance wasn't that great. He gazed at the rising sun, it seemed almost yellow, and then looked back to the gate and started. Something strange was coming out of it. It was a clump of grass. Weeds were growing here and there out of a tunic sewn with many loose strips of fabric and strings. If one laid it sideways in the marsh, from a distance, it would have looked like a patch of grass. He'd seen a monster like this somewhere before. Zayusu remembered something he'd seen on his travels. Behind him, Rororo let out a low warning call. Of course, he knew who it was. There was no mistaking her with her white tail peeking out a bit. He watched the tail sway cheerfully and calmed Rororo down as the clump of grass came over to him. Morning. Yeah, good morning. It seems you had no trouble getting the tribe on board. He looked at the Red Eye dwellings. The village was in a frenzy first thing in the morning. Lizardmen ran busily to and fro. Crush stood next to him facing the same direction. She answered yes, there was no trouble. We should be ready to leave for the Razor-Tail tribe today. The evacuees should be ready soon too. According to information the priests received via magic, Razor-Tail had been sentenced to annihilation first. Timing-wise, it was fortunate it hadn't been Dragon Tusk. So why did you come out here, Crush? Simple, Zayusu, but before that, tell me what you're planning to do now. After the meeting that lasted from evening into the early morning, it seemed natural to call each other by name. They'd gotten closer so they could speak more at ease. I am going to go to another tribe, Dragon Tusk. Strength is everything to them, right? They supposedly have the most powerful military of all the tribes. Yeah, that's right. We've never had dealings with them before, so I have to go prepared. Everything he'd ever heard about them was wrapped in mystery. Going at all was extremely dangerous. And the fact that they had taken in survivors from the two tribes who lost the war made it even more dangerous. From the perspective of those survivors, Zayusu, who had fought in the war, was without a doubt a hateful enemy. Still, for the upcoming fight, Dragon Tusk was the tribe whose cooperation he needed the most. I see, then I should definitely go with you. What, is that weird? The clump of grass rustled. He couldn't see her face, so he wasn't sure what she meant. I don't know if it's weird, but it's dangerous. Is there anywhere that isn't dangerous right now? Zayusu hesitated. If he thought it over clearly, there were lots of benefits to taking her along. But as a male, he didn't like the idea of taking his crush into certain peril. I am not thinking clearly. The grass hid her from view, but it seemed like she laughed a little bit. I have a different question. What else with the get-up? Does it not look good on me? Looking good, or not, wasn't the issue. It's bizarre, but would it be better to praise her? Zayusu wasn't sure how to respond. After careful consideration, he decided to get on her good side, even though he couldn't see her expression. I guess it looks good. Yeah, right, she snapped. There was probably nothing Zayusu could have done to not feel disheartened in that moment. I just can't take the sunlight, so I usually wear this when I go out. I see, oh, but I didn't get your answer. Will you let me go with you? It was pointless to say what he thought, and having her along would probably work to his advantage in forming the alliance. Maybe she had proposed it because she thought so too. In that case, he didn't have any more objections. Okay, lend me your strength, Crush. She looked thrilled from the bottom of her heart. Got it, Zayusu. You can count on me. Are you ready to go? Of course. I packed my bag and everything. Now that she mentioned it, there was a lump on her back under the grass. It smelled like fresh herbs, a little pungent. As a druid, she probably had techniques that used medicinal herbs, so she must have brought some. Zayusu, you look sleepy. Oh, I am just a little bit. Between this and that, I haven't really slept much in the past couple of days. A white hand suddenly extended from under her grass clothes. Here, it is a Rico nut. Try chewing it with the shell on. Zayusu took the brown nut out of her hand and unhesitatingly popped it into his mouth. A bitterness radiated out of it and took the edge off his tiredness, but he couldn't really say he felt awake. As he kept chewing, however, the flavor suddenly exploded across his tongue. It made his breath smell too. MPH, how refreshing, it really gets into your sinuses. He inadvertently reacted in his brother's trademark way. Shoo, Crush laughed at him. You're not sleepy anymore, right? But that doesn't mean you're not tired, so don't overdo it. You should take a break when you can. Satisfied by the fresh, cool feeling in his mouth and nose, Zayusu nodded.